The estate auction laughed as a young woman paid $100 for a welded-shut rusty chest, then she shocked everyone. The old estate sat on a hill overlooking the town, abandoned for nearly 30 years after the death of its mysterious owner, Henry Whitmore. People often spoke about the mansion in whispers. Some believed Henry had hidden a fortune somewhere on the property before he died. Others said the stories were nothing more than local legends. When the government finally approved the estate auction, hundreds of people arrived hoping to discover something valuable. Antique dealers, collectors, treasure hunters, and curious neighbors crowded the grounds. Among them was a young woman named Emma Carter. She was 24 years old and worked at a small repair shop. Unlike the others, she was not wealthy. She had saved money for months just to attend the auction. Most people ignored her simple clothes and quiet appearance. They were too busy competing over expensive furniture, paintings, and jewelry. As the auction continued, item after item sold for thousands of dollars. Emma watched carefully but never raised her bidding card. Near the end of the day, workers rolled out a large rusty chest covered in dust. The iron chest was ugly and heavily damaged. Its lid had been welded shut many years earlier. Rust covered every corner. No one could see what was inside. The auctioneer shrugged and announced that the chest would be sold as is. Laughter spread through the crowd. One antique dealer joked that the chest was probably filled with old bricks. Another man said it would cost more to haul away than it was worth. The bidding started at $50. Nobody raised a hand. The auctioneer lowered the price to $25. Still nothing. Emma stared at the chest. Something about it caught her attention. She noticed unusual craftsmanship beneath the rust. The metalwork looked far older and more valuable than the estate record suggested. She slowly raised her card. $100, she said. The crowd burst into laughter. People shook their heads. Some whispered that she was wasting her money. The auctioneer quickly accepted the bid since nobody else wanted the chest. Moments later, Emma officially became its owner. As workers loaded it onto a trailer, several people continued making jokes. One man asked if she planned to use it as a flower pot. Emma simply smiled and thanked the workers. She drove the chest to the repair shop where she worked. Her boss, an older mechanic named Frank, helped her unload it. Together they examined the strange object. Frank noticed the same unusual details Emma had seen earlier. The weld marks looked newer than the chest itself. Someone didn't build this chest shut, Frank said. Someone sealed it shut. That observation made Emma even more curious. For 2 days she carefully cleaned away rust and dirt. Underneath appeared beautiful engraved patterns. The chest was much older than anyone had realized. Finally she decided to cut through the welded seam. Frank stood nearby while sparks flew across the workshop. After several hours of careful work, the lid finally loosened. Emma lifted it slowly. Both she and Frank froze in disbelief. Inside were dozens of leather-bound journals wrapped in protective cloth. Beneath them sat several velvet bags. Emma opened one bag and gasped. It contained gold coins dating back more than 200 years. Another bag held rare silver coins. Hidden underneath was a wooden box containing antique documents, maps, and certificates. The discovery was astonishing. However, the biggest surprise was still waiting. Emma spent the next week reading the journals. They had belonged to Henry Whitmore and several generations of his family before him. The writings described the family's history, business dealings, and travels across Europe and America. Among the papers was documentation proving ownership of a long-forgotten mining company established in the 19th century. Emma contacted historians and legal experts. After weeks of investigation, they confirmed an incredible fact. The mining company technically still existed. Though inactive for decades, it still owned land containing valuable mineral rights. Those rights were worth millions of dollars. News spread rapidly throughout the town. Reporters arrived at the repair shop. The same people who had laughed at Emma now wanted interviews. Antique experts estimated the historical value of the journals and coins alone at hundreds of thousands of dollars. The mining rights were worth far more. One reporter asked Emma whether she felt lucky. She shook her head. Luck helped, she admitted. But I also paid attention when everyone else was laughing. Her answer quickly became famous online. Yet Emma did not allow the sudden attention to change her character. Instead of selling everything immediately, she worked with museums and historians to preserve the documents. Several journals contained important information about local history that had been lost for generations. The town museum created a special exhibit featuring many of the items discovered in the chest. Thousands of visitors came to see it. Local businesses benefited from the tourism. The community celebrated Emma not just for finding treasure but for sharing it. Months later, Emma received a formal offer from a large investment company interested in purchasing the mining rights. The deal would make her financially secure for life. After careful consideration, she accepted. Even after becoming wealthy, she continued supporting local projects, scholarships, and historical preservation programs. One afternoon, nearly a year after the auction, Emma visited the museum exhibit. She stood quietly beside the old rusty chest. Children stared at it with fascination. A young boy asked how someone could know there was treasure inside something that looked so worthless. Emma smiled. "You don't always know," she replied. "Sometimes the world sees rust, and sometimes there's something extraordinary hidden underneath. The important thing is not being afraid to look." The boy nodded thoughtfully. As Emma walked away, she glanced back at the chest one final time. $100 had bought her more than treasure. It had taught an entire town a lesson they would never forget: opportunities often arrive disguised as things everyone else ignores, and those who dare to see value where others see junk can change their lives forever.